And we'll begin. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to session 2 of the Better Leader Inner Circle. And today we're going to talk about what's the heck is leadership and what different styles of leadership and how are we going to make it work? How can we be successful? And we'll just start off by thinking this is more or less not my definition, but a lot of the definitions about what is leadership can be pretty airy-fairy and out there. But I think this is the one that I sort of lands with me quite a bit, is that it's actually getting something done, achieving a goal or an objective. And that's how do we do that by with influencing others by their actions and attitudes to get it done. So there's some people that say leadership is building this community and building an organization and blah, 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 blah. Well, that's quite frankly to me is, I don't know what you're doing. You're not actually leading anybody, because leadership is moving people to a point in the future. So right now, of course, in Alberta, we have an election and everybody has a different perspective. And our previous premier, a lot of you will remember, Ralph Klein says the goal of being the premier is to find out where the people are going and get ahead of them and lead them there. But another perspective is painting a picture of the future where you want people to come and join you and get there. And in our jobs, in our role as leaders, we often spend a lot more time thinking about how do we get our work done. In the military, it's quite simple. It's like, how do we achieve our goals? How do we take that hill or protect this piece of property or protect these people? And in your roles, it could be anything from, making sure that, I know, for example, for Brad and his work, it's about getting the transfers done. He works in a funeral adjacent business or funeral business, and it's about treating people with dignity and respect. And his boss's perspective is to turn a profit by doing that. As in many of your situations, not for profit, you have to limited time, you have to get X number of service dogs out the front door to the right people and maintain and achieve your goals and your mission. So how do we do that? By influence people? Well, I think one of the complexities around leadership is it's neither good or bad, really. It's a thing. It's a complicated thing, to be sure, but it's not neither good or bad. History is replete with leaders who were terrible human beings and did terrible things to other people, but they were able to motivate and get things done, get people motivated and get them to work with them to achieve these horrible things through leadership skills. Now, I'm not here to defend anything. Bad behavior or horrible people. I've met lots of horrible people in my life. And, but there is an element of how they got that done by motivating people and encouraging them to achieve the objectives that leader wants to get. And so if we take a look at that, how do we get that done? Well, one of the ways we achieve leadership, or how do we become leader-fied, is some of us just get qualified to do that. So we take courses and we take training, we attend programs like the Better Leader Inner Circle or whatever it might be, and we build up a capacity and competency to become a leader. And on that note, I think there are sort of people that exude natural leadership capacity and competency through all sorts of reasons, which we'll explore in the next little bit. But most people can learn to be a good leader. Maybe they're not going to be an Eisenhower or a Churchill or a whomever, but they will build a capacity to do a better job than some. Some people earn leadership by being merited. So by that regard, it's like you merit the leadership. You've earned it in some regard. You've shown people you can be a leader. Other people, generally in sort of in the negative sense of becoming a leader, capture leadership. So you just take over. In the military, it's called a coup or a mutiny. You take over and somebody becomes the leader. More often than not in our work, we often become identified as leaders. So someone will take a look around a room or inside of an organization and see that there's somebody there that's got a lot of capacity. They seem to be an informal leader within their group. And these people become identified, and then they work their way up into a leadership role. Yeah, Nicole, please.
Do you mind taking a quick second to do a bit more elaboration on the difference between qualified and merited?
Oh, interesting. I think it's a fine line, to be perfectly honest, but I do believe that merit is, I've been around for a long time. Merit is somebody that is merited leadership. It could be, it's not a great example, but people get promoted usually in a union or a collective agreement setting because they've got time in rank or time in position.
So it's experience based.
Yeah, I would say it's experience and time as opposed to qualified. Like we all know, I've never actually worked in depth, like intimately within a collective agreement, but my wife worked for the city for a long time, and she was super, I thought, because, well, maybe I'm biased, but I thought she was qualified to do whatever they wanted her to do. And she never got promoted because somebody else said 6 more months in.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that would be the principal
difference
between the two.
Than defaulted.
Yeah. So a defaulted is nobody's doing it, so people look to you.
Okay. So it's an empty void, and you're just
somebody says, okay, you're going to walk in there and just it defaults to you because, so for example, I don't know if you've ever done this exercise. Sometimes I do it in a setting along this. It doesn't work very well virtually, but have you ever done one of those survival game tests where there's a bunch of questions and you say, okay, well, if you were lost in the woods and you only had to bring 3 things with you, or you were looking for water, where would you look? And it's kind of an interesting thing to workshop with a group, because you can see people with experience. Like I did one time, and everybody said, well, you were in the Army, so obviously you know all these answers. Well, I never got lost in the woods. I used to teach wilderness training experience. But some people just say, oh, there's somebody that he's old, he's white, or she looks experienced, or they've been around a long time, or whatever. And they say, oh, that person I'll default to that person. A great example in my working career, Nicole, was at one time before I became the provincial director, there was 2 administrative regions here in Alberta. And my peer, who was a director for Central and Northern Alberta, and I was the director for the South, was a lovely, bright, brilliant woman. To be respectful, she was a bit dowdy. She looked more like a librarian than a director of an organization. And we had a meeting at the legislature one time, and we were walking across by the pool area going up to the ledge, and she had a whole bunch of papers walking in her arm like this, and she looked like the secretary, to be perfectly honest. Right. And people were defaulting to me because I had a suit on and I was a man, likely too, that didn't help her situation. So as we were realizing what was happening when we went on the ledge and people were deferring to me quite a bit, I actually took a bunch of stuff she was carrying and carried it. So at least we looked more like peers.
Right.
So that was the default of leadership. Does that help?
Default also be like, say when you mentioned, or maybe I mentioned, void. So say somebody leaves an organization at a leadership position, and so you just sort of fill in because you're the next hot chair kind of thing. You get that lovely title like interim something or other. And then hopefully merit is the reason they drop the word interim.
Yeah. I would say that's more identified than default. Okay. I would say default would be if nobody, and I've seen this happen actually in some organizations where they didn't actually formally appoint the leader.
Okay.
And then there was this, it becomes a big problem, right? Because it's like a bloody, unwinnable battle between 2 or 3 people that think they should be in charge. Right. So it kind of defaults to somebody.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just I'm using these terms when I'm sort of looking at my journey. And so I'm just, I'm going to just land on qualified. That's where I'm going to land.
That's where, yeah. And merited is a good place to be too, because you've earned something, right? So yeah, excellent. Thanks for the question. That's great.
Yeah.
I see we had somebody else join us. Oh, Diana, nice to meet you. See you, Diana. So what are the qualities of a leader that we want to achieve? And leadership, leading a team to be effective, we have to possess some of these skills and competencies to lead effectively. So when we get into it, we don't have enough to break out, but maybe in this room, like, what are some of the things that you see that would be some, if you look around or in your experience, who you regarded as a good or effective leader, or even a great leader, and what are some of the qualities that you identified in that person? So you can either go in the chat box, you could just jump into the conversation. What do you think, Nicole? You've been thinking about this, Nicole. You go ahead.
All right, I was going to type, but I'll talk.
Yeah, please.
I was going to say capable communicator, somebody who can have an idea, but take it from their head and explain it to others in a way that it like lands with those people. So they get the same thing that I got when I had the thought.
Oh, interesting. So somebody that, a great communicator, somebody can articulate what's going on around them.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Anybody else? Winston, Diana?
I'd say I need somebody that can think of different scenarios quite quickly, and if there's a problem, they can, they got enough experience or enough creativity to like, and then say articulate what they're thinking, right? So
So if I may use different words, like it would be somebody that can sort of take in all this information and sift it through to come up with. Is that sort of what you're thinking about, Winston?
Yeah, maybe not the communication so much, but somebody that has the idea, I guess, is what to do next. But obviously communication is the next step, but
right,
gotta have the idea first of all, maybe. So
yeah, excellent. So anybody else, somebody that we haven't heard from? Brad, Diana, what has made somebody stand out to you as a good leader, a great leader? What was their attribute that they demonstrated?
I guess I got one more.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, somebody that's considerate of everybody that they're working with.
Yeah, I like that.
However you want to explain that. So.
Yeah, there's a level of compassion and empathy for everyone, other people in the group and the team. Communications. Sometimes I hear when we do these breakouts is, somebody, we just did one I teach at Mount Royal, a similar program, and they were talking about their general manager at the plant. It was seemingly always had their back.
Yeah.
Like they could, and it boils down to trust, right? Somebody that can really establish a high degree of confidence and trust with people, even if sometimes the answers they have to give or the things they have to do aren't always very nice. But sorry, go ahead. I think
another important part is sort of in that compassion line, but having the ability to make everybody feel heard, right? So when you're asking somebody something, there's no bad ideas kind of thing, but making sure that that's not just a phrase, it's the actual reality of encouraging someone to actually say something and then to support them when they do.
Yeah. So we're going to spend one of these sessions on talking and communicating, but that's an excellent point. Like, I have a bad habit. I see Diana has typed in statesmanship and diplomacy. So those are both excellent points. But in my personal life, and actually at work too, is like, I hate when somebody steps on the end of my sentence. Like it feels like you're not listening and you don't care. Right. So it's like letting someone finish their thought. When I do coach people with stuff like this, it's like let someone finish their thought, take a couple of seconds to truly consider what they said, and B, to allow them to think that you're considering what you said, right? A friend was at a session, a workplace session just the last couple of days, And every sentence that somebody responded to from the field, from the workers, from senior management, they talked about what the person said, and then they said, but. And when you say but, you would negate everything that came before that, right?
Mhm.
It's like, I don't care what you said, but this is what's going to happen, right? So it's even words that we use that are showstoppers. Yeah, excellent. Anybody else have something to add to that? There's Diana and Pepper. Yeah. So anyway, so these are all things I think that are, we all understand, but I think every once in a while we need to be reminded of the importance of these attributes that we have, because we get busy and we forget how important these things are. So again, a leader is somebody who has a goal, a focus, or a belief, and is able to convince or influence others to follow it. And I think what would be a goal in your workplace or your setting offline that you could relatively easily articulate to somebody to start to convince them or influence them? Anybody, any ideas?
I guess for
Yeah,
me,
go ahead, Nicole.
my day is spent convincing people that the work they do matters.
Oh, interesting.
It's not just a simple task. It's a task that has a role in doing something bigger than that. So I need them to feel that. Otherwise, they could do this task anywhere, kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah. And Winston, you're in a different setting. You're in an industrial, manufacturing, industrial machine shop sort of setting. How would you articulate something for your people that would be able to convince?
I guess what we kind of do is we encourage them to. There's two things we kind of do. We encourage them to increase their skills, as in, whatever skill they're working on, like make himself, better at it, and so they can, in the end of the day, better their careers, earn more money, whatever, however you want to describe it. And then the other thing we try to do is encourage them to be more versatile, as in be able to do more tasks, so they don't get pigeonholed, and again, they can better their career, better their general knowledge, and again, add more, increase their rate of pay, maybe, I guess. Those are two things I can think of, I guess.
Yeah, excellent. So Diana's put some stuff in the chat box about, get people from the school. Diana is a head of school for a private school. So, her setting is trying to get people on her board and try to move people from parents, get people to be engaged in the organization. I know there's one client I have who I think I might have mentioned last time we were talking, and they make this device that allows entry for police departments and law enforcement to get in through doors and open things up. And it's a non-explosive pneumatics tool. And so they've been able to articulate that they have a zero tolerance for mistakes, because if they make a mistake, somebody's going to get hurt or killed. So what they want, they have a high, their goal is to establish a system where there's a zero tolerance for an error. And that can be highly motivating for some people, as can be developing you as a leader or as a person or as a machinist or whatever it is, so you can move forward. So there's some theories about how leadership works, and I promise this won't be all about academic work, but some of the theories that we have out there are the great leader, which I think is highly overstated because there's only so many great leaders in this world. But you can go through history, Churchill, Eisenhower probably is certainly in a wartime setting. Mahatma Gandhi, even Sister Teresa is a quiet level of leadership. You could also go back in history to somebody like Caesar or even Cleopatra, and maybe even a bit further behind that, beyond that would be Alexander the Great, or all of these people have taken on a aura of leadership that's probably maybe even bigger than they merited or deserve. I should say, use the word merited in that setting. But there's traits that some of us, I don't put a lot of stock in this trait leadership theory because that boxes people in. So a trait would be super articulate speaker, an orator. Lincoln would be who had a great skill to talk. Other people could be a leader because of traits just by the sheer size or volume of their personality and the way they conduct themselves. I'll jump over situational for a second. We also have behavioral functional theories. So those are people who are really good at a job. They are experts in their field, and they get to the point where they take on a leadership role because they're good at their job. And we talked about this last time in the fact that the world is full of failed site superintendents who used to be great carpenters. So again, behavioral or functional leadership will only get you so far. And you probably heard the Peter principle before, is somebody gets promoted 2 levels above their competencies because they're really good at their job, and they build up this momentum in their career to become a leader. And quite frankly, leadership is a whole new profession, not a new job. We also have transactional theories, and this only carries so much water for me. This is like, I'm paying you to do a job, so do the goddamn job. and that doesn't carry very much water. It's part of being a boss and a leader, but it doesn't carry all that much water. And then the last part is transformational. And a transformational leader paints this wonderful, glorious picture in the future and inspires people to move toward it. And those people, again, are quite rare in history because you have to really motivate. I would probably even argue in the current setting of social media and information everywhere all of the time, that I think a transformational leader would be quite rare to ever see come out, because you have to motivate all of these people, everyone, to come along with you. Now, the situational leadership is probably the most interesting in that. I shouldn't say, and we'll talk about it in a few more minutes, but situational means you apply the right level of leadership, the right style of situation to the right circumstance and to the right person. So I do not respond well to an autocratic leader. Even though I was in the army, I didn't like it. I wanted someone that could bring me along and inspire me to be something bigger and better. And so that's just my way. Other people can respond to that in certain circumstances. And we'll talk about some different examples. But the next thing I want to do is share my screen with you on a video. Where is it? There it is. And it talks about 5 stages of a team. And then we'll come back to the different types of leadership to see how you go.
If you want to maximize your team's effectiveness, the first thing you need to know is the stages that a team goes through. Typically, a team goes through 5 stages of development. In 1965, psychologist Bruce Tuckman researched and published a theory of 4 stages of team development: forming, storming, norming, and performing. Then in 1977, further research conducted by Tuckman in conjunction with Mary Ann Jensen added a 5th stage, adjourning. Tuckman's stages describe the process that teams go through as the members connect and form bonds to work effectively. Each stage presents its own unique challenges to effective leadership and management. By adjusting your leadership style and taking specific actions based on which stage your team is at, you will be able to support the effectiveness of the team. Being able to identify which stage a team is in can be important, as you may have been hired or promoted into a leadership role and the team is already there. You may have to adapt your ideas and plans to fit the skills and knowledge of the existing team. Other times, you may have the opportunity to create the team from the ground up or add members to an existing team. Now, the team stages. So the first step is forming. In this first stage, team members are on their best behaviour, making an effort to fit in and getting to know each other. Their motivation comes from within, and experience gained, both positive and negative, from previous teams they've been involved with will have an impact on their behaviour. Some team members will be excited about the challenge ahead, and others may be nervous or anxious. The leader's role is important in directing the work effort, as roles and responsibilities may not yet be clear. It is in this stage that the creating of a team charter is a very useful tool. We will look at that in greater detail later. The second stage is storming. Team members will be testing the boundaries of the team and each other. At this stage, team members may be focusing more on their own specific task at the expense of others and the team itself. Members may question the input of others and voice opinions about individuals or the group as a whole. This may manifest itself in personality clashes or even questioning the scope or mission of the team itself. These disagreements and conflicts must be resolved before the team moves out of this stage. It is at this stage that many teams may fail. If the members can't find a way to work productively together and resolve differences and issues, then they won't be effective. It requires a different leadership style to ensure conflict is avoided or resolved in a positive way. As the leader, you must keep the team motivated, help the team to address any issues as they arise, and regularly clarify the purpose and goals. The third stage is norming. As trust and respect grows between team members, the team will gradually move into the norming stage. Members will start to be able to resolve differences and appreciate the skills and knowledge of other team members. When faced with difficulties or issues, individuals will tend to ask other team members for help and guidance. At this stage, the focus of the individual is on the shared goal, and members have the ambition and responsibility to achieve a positive outcome for the team. Team members will be more accepting of the differences between each other and look for ways that these differences can positively enhance the effectiveness of the team, rather than seeing them as an irritant. Once again, the leadership style should vary from the preceding stages to ensure team effectiveness. Even though the team may be performing well, it may not be at the most effective level. For example, it is not unusual for team members to be so focused on preventing conflict that they in fact are reluctant to contribute challenging ideas and concepts. Good leadership will ensure robust discussion continues to add value to the team. And the fourth stage, performing. In this stage, teams operate with little friction and there are high levels of trust, respect, and motivation. Team members are comfortable in knowing that their own role and that of the others will allow team success. The team is often self-directing without the need for direct supervision. This is when team effectiveness is maximised. The role of the leader is now very much that of a facilitator, aiding the team to communicate effectively and assisting if the team reverts to a prior stage. And the fifth stage, adjourning. If the team is temporary, it will eventually reach the intended purpose and will need to be disbanded through organisational policies. Sometimes permanent teams will be finished if there is a significant change through an organisational restructure, for example. The leader has an important role to play here. Some team members may find this stage difficult if they have formed strong bonds or if their future looks uncertain. It is important to remember that each of these stages are a spectrum, and teams may exhibit aspects of multiple stages as they develop and transition. It is the role of the leader and manager to identify what stage the team is at and use their leadership style along with specific tools and techniques to maximize the team effectiveness.
So I just want to, so am I muted? Sorry. Can you hear me okay?
You're good. I can hear
Okay,
you.
thank you. There's just a weird mute button showing up on my screen. So I want to speak, we're going to build on that little video. One thing about that little video, if you really want to sound like you're smart in North America, you need an Australian accent, because it seems everybody pays attention a lot more. But there's 4 principal parts of the styles of leadership that I want to talk about now, and then we'll go back to the storming, norming, forming, and performing idea. And that there are general, I say there's a 5th one, but we won't speak. I'll just address it, but we're not going to spend too much time on it. But there's that autocratic, and we all been there. That's a top down, often a little bit offensive to me, is a militaristic regimental side, where that somebody's the boss, damn it, and we're all going to do what you're told, and everybody shut up. And then there's this charismatic leader style of leadership, which is painting this bigger picture and a lot of energy that goes in, and the boss is excited about life and they want everyone to come along. And there's strengths to that, but there's drawbacks, because it's actually tiresome to your employees if you're always running around full of caffeine and energy. And sometimes, in fact, if you're not always there to motivate and push and be excited about what's going on, and you're not there, then that's the time your employees and your team may slip back. And laissez-faire is quite literally a hands-off approach. It works best in a setting where people are smart and bright and well-trained, super professional, maybe in a team that's been together for a long time, where the boss and the leader can take their hands off and allow things just to go ahead and work forward. But at the same time, there's a strength to that. It allows a lot of autonomy with your employees, and a lot of time where people can be self-directed and be excited, but also people also need to be some direction and need some control. And often when somebody's a laissez-faire sort of leader with their hands off the tiller, they're not always on top of it when things go sideways and things go wrong. So you become a distant leader at the time. And I think if you think back to the first session around the first team concept, there's a separation that happens between you and your people. And the democratic is everybody has a say and everyone gets an opinion. And in some regards, sometimes even people get a vote. And that is not always bad. It doesn't mean that the boss doesn't make the final decision, but in an ideal setting, when that's going on, then everyone gets an opinion, and it gets a chance to pipe in and add to it. And then ideally, the boss should make the final decision, given consideration of all of the factors that were brought to the table. But sometimes we allow these sort of democratic things to get in the way of actually leading and everyone having a say to allow you to move forward. And the final one, just to touch on briefly, is bureaucratic. And that by default often means government or public sector, but not exclusively. It could be a large organization. And that's a very rule-bound, procedure-bound, this is the policy way of doing business. And quite frankly, that's a great way to control and mitigate risk, but a terrible way to lead, because you're not leading, you're just binding people up, so they can't get into any trouble. So I'm going to screen share again for a second here, whiteboard, and I'm going to walk through the steps. So we form. And then, as was described, we norm when we start pulling things together. And, oh, sorry, that's not right. We form, and then we storm, and then we norm, and then we perform. And then at a certain point, we might adjourn, but we're not going to spend too much time on that. So if we adjourn a team, it's probably a project-based model. And I think the most important part of that is, okay, you just don't cut everybody loose and send them back home. You celebrate and you honor the work that the team did. But in most of our settings, we don't adjourn very often. So if we're forming, this is a very nascent beginning of it, and we're starting to add people to our team, and we may not even know people we're hiring in, or even if we are a new leader, we're bringing our people together and we form. So what kind of leadership style, feel free, because I can't see the chat box right now, but feel free to unmute and talk to yourself. What kind of leadership style do you think would be a great model to use when you're starting to form? Sort of autocratic or charismatic, laissez-faire? Any thoughts?
I think that you're going to need that charismatic energy. You're going to need
Oh,
that
interesting. Yeah.
person who can get everybody seeing things sort of the same way.
Yeah. So you want to paint the
Help them,
picture,
paint the picture as to where they're going to go,
bring
because
people
they don't know
together.
yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. There he was, doing what I hated other people doing to me. Sorry, Nicole.
That's right. I also think, though, that democratic could be a little bit helpful in this time point, because you want everyone to feel that they have the ability to contribute.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So so you're bringing in 2 or 3 different styles into this forming thing, right?
Yeah, because I think your people are different, right? I think it goes back to one of your previous definitions about like situational. You got to use the right style at the right time with the right people.
Yeah.
And so just because they're all the people are in the same time and place doesn't mean they're going to respond to the same person style.
Yeah, and just so you know, Diana is a true artist and I'm not. So she's probably looking at my paintings, my pictures here going, what the heck is that guy doing? So at a certain point, we're together, right? So at the beginning, there's a lot of goodwill, generally. Sometimes not, maybe, right? Because if people don't want to be there, that's a different conversation. But generally, it's goodwill. You're bringing people in. People are being hired in. You're starting to learn about what's going on in the organization. I see somebody made a chat. Maybe it's Diana. Oh, I got a high marks from the artiste, or a mediocre mark, maybe. But at a certain point, people start bumping into each other, right? So we have personalities, we have a leader, there's personality, we have members of the team, and this is the storming part. And it's quite a natural thing. It's sort of like in a dating situation when we form, we're excited to be together, we love each other, and we want to make this work. And in my experience, through a series of failed relationships, because I've been very good at that part of my life, at a certain point, all the things that used to be cute and endearing become major irritants in your relationship. And the same thing at work. That's the storming part, because we're bringing personalities into play, right? So what kind of leadership style would suit the storming model a little bit, the storming phase that we'd be going through? And even if it's not specifically listed there, feel free to add it. So do you think maybe this might be a little bit of time to bring in some rigidity to the situation, to be able to bring some discipline to the organization? So the styles, autocratic, charismatic, laissez-faire, democratic.
I would say that, yeah, probably your autocratic, but again, still maybe a bit of that democratic, just so that everyone feel. I'm all about people feeling.
Yeah.
It's because I'm in the not-for-profit.
Sure.
It's about feeling.
Yeah.
If they have tension, I think that democratic chance would sort of give everyone the ability to say why they think what they think. And then your rigidity or your autocratic is like, that's your but sentence.
Yeah,
I hear what you're feeling, but here's what we're going to do because we got to get stuff done.
Yeah. The part that's not there mentioned as a specific leadership style, but it's more of a leadership tool, is you become more of a facilitator, right? You start bringing people together and you use these other styles to kind of bring people together and bridge the gap between where people are and where you need them to be, because often people don't understand that, well, you know, I've been in the company for whatever X number of years, and that person's brand new and I don't have to listen to that. So there's a lot of conversation, a lot of talking. And yes, at a certain point, you may very well have to bring a level of autocrat rigidity to it. Yeah, democratic to create a different level of agreement would be another idea. But at a certain point, then we do get through this phase, and then we start to settle into a procedure where the road is more straight, hopefully, and more direction, and everybody kind of knows, they start to learn each other's styles a little bit, and then we become the norm, and that's when we can back off a wee bit, right? We might start becoming a little bit more laissez-faire, but not to the point where people start driving off the road or heading in their own directions and stuff like that. So we need to build some structure around what we're doing. And then at a certain point, and most of us, I feel sad for lots of people, because I've been lucky through my work as a soldier, and both and when I was working in disasters, there is this point where things start to perform. I mean, when I say perform, it's humming. It's really exciting. And it's a massive, that's supposed to be a star, sorry. It's exciting, and it's almost, I wouldn't even say romantic, but it could be like, when I think back to the times when we were super performing, we were fit and strong and well led, and we were focused on a good, high, noble mission. Like, I can feel the energy even today thinking back on some of those times, and that was super exciting. But we have a problem sometimes. I'm going to just change my color so you can see. So this is not, as the speaker mentions it, this is not a continuum, a linear model where it goes all the way around the circle from form to storm to norm and back. We often end up having to consider going back. So I'm on a board. It's a great example, but and I think you can apply the lesson from this to your workplace a little bit. And before COVID, we spent a lot of time together. We met almost always in Edmonton. We spent 2 or 3 or 4 days together every quarter. We spent a lot of time on committee work, virtual and on the phone. And this group of people had become super tight. And we were moving from that norm setting to the perform setting, I would say. And then during COVID, the board is one that the government appoints public members to, that's why I'm on it. But the previous provincial government appointed 4 or 5 new people to the board. We went from about 10 people that really knew each other, liked each other, worked well together, to back up to the full complement of people around 15. And these people joined in COVID, and they were not caught, that's not fair to them, but we never met these people. We never had a chance to talk to them. And they were virtual. They were 2-dimensional people on a screen. And this other team of people who were like good friends and great team members were a little bit, it was a hard place for them to break in. To put a poor analogy to it, it was sort of like the mean girls in high school, and these other people kind of joined the club, and they had a hard time. And what we missed was, so if we were, say, somewhere in this part of the journey of the formation of a team, we went back to there. We should have went back to forming. We should have purposely went back to bring the team together, paint the picture, get people to understand so it was almost like a reform. But instead we went like this and crashed into this terrible storming setting. And it was ugly with a capital U. I have to say it was terrible. And for all of the people on that board who, so many of them were leaders in their own right, we completely missed this. And so the lesson I want to share with you today is when you bring new people into your team, or you bump into something new as a mission or a goal for your organization, you cannot assume that you're going to be in this place here, wherever that is. You have to remember to go back to form. You have to go back to form, and you have to go back through the storming model again. Because if you don't, you will just spin out of control down into here. And it was an expensive lesson. One person was not, when I say hurt, not physically hurt, but they were quite quite thrown off and lost some professional credibility in the whole environment. And I think that we did everyone a disservice in that. So the lesson that I wanted to share with you folk is that you need to remember if anything significant changes, COVID, as Diana is mentioning into the chat box, and her example too was that for a number of reasons, but principally it was a different setting, COVID. They really should have went back to forming, and they went crashing straight into this terrible storming model in their organization. But to give them credit, they invested a lot of time and energy to bring themselves along and put them back on track. But even if you add a new person, especially an executive or a leadership team, if you add a new person to that team, you as a leader need to consider how you're going to move back into that forming and then storming. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, that model should move quite quickly back onto track. It's not like you're starting from fresh, but you got to go back.
Steve, I just want to say thank you for that, because I've been doing a lot of reading and learning, and everyone is talking about those stages, and everyone acknowledges that it's a sliding scale, but no one ever has said stop and go back to the beginning. I work in an industry that has, sadly not-for-profit has a lot of turnover.
Yeah.
And so just when we get gelling is when somebody has the confidence to think that they're like, yeah, I'm ready to take my skills elsewhere. And then they leave. And so then your gelling team, and then it's a struggle because you now have to add somebody.
Yeah.
You were gelling, like it's very hard to go from norm or from perform all the way back. And so I think I appreciate that you have to go back. And I want to say thank you for saying that, because I think we assume that we can, if we put in time and effort on that one person that's new, they'll get to where everyone else is. But you got to go through all of the steps, because I think everybody needs the chance to get back to where they were.
Well, thank you for that. I agree 100%, obviously. I agree with myself. But no, it's a great point. And, even things like new hires. So for example, a new hire in particular in a COVID, you do an onboarding, and you do all of the stuff to bring them on team. But a lot of the things that they learn about how to join the team is they learn by watching. It's like your kids, right? Like I have a 3-year-old granddaughter, a lovely, beautiful girl, and all of a sudden she's saying things that her mom and dad say. Like nobody told her this is how you talk to people, but she watches. And our employees, and especially a new member, well, can I tease? If Diana's my boss, can I tease Diana? Can I be a little bit on the edge about some of the things I say? Do we take coffee breaks together? How do we move around? So that all feeds into the forming and storming, right? So people need to understand the culture and the values and the way the organization works. And I think we just need to acknowledge that a little bit more than maybe what we do.
But I think it's also really helpful. Like there's nothing wrong with norm and perform. That's always the goal. But I think to have that little bit of a pause, and then especially if you are using like that charismatic energy back at the form stage, you're hopefully recharging everyone's batteries, just giving them, and even if you go with that democratic, you're giving them a chance to be like, oh yeah, different. I hadn't even thought of that because I've been doing it on habit for so long, kind of thing. So I think that if you phrase it correctly and set everybody up for success, it can be beneficial to go back there. It just has to be done with, like, I would say sort of like a respect. It's like why we're doing it is to bring this new person to a place where they're successful, as opposed to saying you haven't, like the rest of you haven't been successful and we have to start again.
No, for sure. It's a new team, right? you put something new in the team, it becomes a new team.
Right.
So I think the next thing to speak about as we're talking about leadership is vulnerability. And so here's a little story on myself, and it ties back to what you were just speaking about, Nicole. So a few years ago, most people know that I had an Army career and a disaster management career, and I've seen a lot of things that no normal human being should ever have to see. And I was really struggling a few years ago. And luckily, I had a pretty good doctor, medical doctor, and we were talking about it. And he actually was a reservist medical officer, he was instantly relevant to what I was thinking about. And I was explaining what was going on, and he said, "Oh, that's normal." And I was never so relieved in my life to know that it was normal, right? And I think too, if you go back to what you were mentioning, Nicole, is if we understand, explain to people this is a normal thing to happen, people can manage and observe it through it quickly. But as leaders, I think too, we need to consider the vulnerability of what we are doing, and we have to be very cognizant in these models that there's a level of vulnerability that not everyone's going to be comfortable with. So if the team is upset and bumping into each other and causing storming, tell people that it's a normal experience, I think is helpful for them as they move through it. And I think too, that we have to acknowledge that leadership, as a leader, we're going to piss people off. That's our job, part of our job. Shouldn't be every day. The world shouldn't be mad at you every day, but it's part of the thing that we have to go through. If everybody's happy with you, you're probably doing something wrong. And if everybody's mad at you, you're probably doing something wrong. And we have to figure out how to hold on and be managed through fear, because often we bump in, especially in this day and age, in the last few years, we're always bumping into this fearsome thing where people are scared. Okay, Diana, take care. We'll talk soon. And we need to understand as a leader that we are enough. That little voice in the back of your head should shut up, because it's telling you you're not enough, but we are enough. We are exactly what our people need at that particular time. So show up for them. And dealing with shame or problematic situations with our workers and our place and how we need to find the courage to step up. And that we are always dealing with uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, because we are dealing with people's lives. We were talking a bit before we started about the importance of how we do it, dealing with people's lives. We're dealing with people's families and children and their pets and their groceries. And I think we just need to acknowledge that. But being vulnerable does not mean that we have to share everything. Being vulnerable just sometimes means, look, I'm dealing with it. I'm having one of my coaching clients is dealing with a tough thing. And not sure, she was holding it back and not sharing with the rest of her team. I said, you need to tell people that you're going through a divorce. And you need to tell them what they can do to support you. Part of which might mean not talking to me about going through a divorce. Or sometimes I'll be leaving the office because we got, lots going on. So that's all you need to do to be vulnerable, is just acknowledge that you too might be going through a tough time. That most people don't really want to hear much more than that. But if you share with that, then they start sharing back with you. And I think as leaders, we need to be a little bit more comfortable with vulnerability. And when I say this, I'm not acknowledging walking around the office, tears in your eyes, hugging people, boo-hooing about every little bit. That's not the level of vulnerability that I'm talking about. I'm just talking about acknowledging that this is a very human endeavor. The last piece on this particular piece is the model you probably may or may not have heard about, the servant leadership, and it's taken on a weight that's probably more than it deserves. But servant leadership means that we are leading through by putting our employees first. But where people get tripped up on servant leadership is that by putting people first, we diminish or we mitigate, or whatever the right word is, it's a little bit tongue-tied right now, sorry, is that we still have a goal. We still have a mission. And the reason that we become servant leaders is to achieve our mission. Like some of the most thoughtful, compassionate, empathetic leaders I ever met were in the military, and the part of their job was potentially to have you get killed. They can still care, but if you get to the point where you are mitigating or downplaying the mission and more investing too much time in dealing with your own people, then you're not being a leader. You might be becoming a servant, but you're not doing a very good job. And it's not new. It's been around for thousands of years. And, you know, you can go through the texts of great religions about being a servant leader. But the bottom line is it's just a model of making sure, if you're okay, Winston, I would refer back to what you're saying. You're talking about building up your employees and giving them places to succeed and rewarding. That's like actually, quite frankly, a model of servant leadership, provided it's tied into whatever it is you're trying to achieve. So I think that's that's all I want to say about that. But I think between vulnerability and servant leadership, I think we need to invest a little bit more energy in those things. The last point on this particular subject is, if the only tool you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything is a nail, right? So, Nicole, you were quite clear about it. I think Diana, Winston, everybody spoke to this a little bit, where you want to model or use the right tool in the right circumstance with the right person. Some people need more rigid instructions and guidance. Some people need a bit more hands-off. Some people need more policies and rules. We've all bumped into those people. They actually, quite frankly, drive me crazy, those guys, but they're there and we need them on our team for lots of good reasons. So some people need to be given a little more guidance. And to ideally model servant leadership is to provide those people what they need to be successful. So sometimes, yes, we're going to have to sit and listen way too much about people's lives than we ever cared or thought we ever needed to. But that, quite frankly, that's what we need to do to motivate them and support them to help us move through. But again, if I emphasize this one more time, I promise I'll probably stop, is we need to be clear about what we're trying to achieve and how do we get there. And if we're always dealing with people's personal stuff and their emotional stuff and their vulnerabilities, we will take our eye off the ball as we go forward. There's a great story, model from the Civil War. It's gone on through history, but the Civil War, they hired all of these, they promoted all of these. If you ever watch some of the old Civil War movies, you'll see that the leaders, the commanders of battalions and regiments were quite young. They were like 20 years old and 24 or 5 years old. Why? Because they were fearless and thought they were immortal, and they made decisions because they thought they could do it. They weren't going to nobody was going to get killed. And at a certain point, they became too invested in their soldiers and wouldn't take the risks they needed to achieve their mission and goals. And then people got killed because they made mistakes, because they were sitting back and not taking risk. Now, that's an extreme situation that hopefully nobody in this group ever will have to face, but that's what happens when you start becoming too much invested in your people. So there's some personality. If we want to do a quick little survey here, just so you get a sense of where you're at. So there's different models. I think we need to have if you have a chance to do it with your team, there's Myers-Briggs, there's DISC. I can send you a free link if you want. Let me know. I'll send you, and I'll tell you what, I'll put in the email that I send out after with the recording and stuff. And you can do there's a free DISC test. So DISC, I can't remember what the DIS, but it's a personality attribute test that sort of gauges where you are. What kind of person are you? An intellectual? Are you data driven? Are you a feelings person? But this one's kind of fun. I don't have a lot of stock in Myers-Briggs because it's there's some question about it, but it's a fun thing because it's The Simpsons, and who doesn't like The Simpsons, right? So if you got a piece of paper in front of you, just write down which you are, an E or an I, if you prefer to direct your energy into people, things, and situations, or you prefer studying and thinking and gathering information and explanation. So if you pick one of the a E or an I and make a note. And then the second pair is on information. Do you prefer dealing with facts and you want it clear? You're a realist. For you, force and power is a tool. That's an S. And if you prefer to deal with ideas, look into the unknown, generate new possibilities, anticipate what isn't apparent, then you're an N. So take your pick, one or the other. The third pair is if you prefer to make all your decisions on logic, analytics, and detached approach. And if you prefer deciding based on values and beliefs and letting your instinct guide you, you're a T or an F. And the last one is if you prefer your life planned out and stable in an organized manner, you're a J. And if you prefer just going with the flow and maintaining flexibility, and you respond to events. So you should have a 4-letter code, whatever it might look like. And then, so if you're willing to just tell me, or so we can get your score. This might be a bit hard to see, but I can help you out. So if you care to share your score.
Me and Principal Skinner.
Are you a Principal Skinner? I love that guy. So if you can see there, you honor commitments. You're able to take constructive criticism well. And the weakness on that is a tendency to believe you're always right. And you value structure that may seem rigid to others.
Yeah.
So someone like that bumping into a system that's laissez-faire and a free-flowing organization will struggle, right? Yep. Winston, do you care to?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm on there. INTP.
INTP. There you are, Professor Fink. You approach things that which interest them very enthusiastically. You're richly imaginative and creative. On the other side, you tend to be suspicious and distrusting of others. You tend to blow off conflicting situations by ignoring them, or else they blow up in heated anger.
I can describe it someday.
Yeah, some days, yeah. So these are not etched in stone. I don't know, is Brad, are you still out there? I know we've lost a few people here. But these are not etched in stone. The other thing, I can send this separately to you too in the email. You're welcome to do it. And I find it interesting because when I do this in the bigger group, I get them to do their boss. Just what they think their boss is like, right? So for example, I know when at Red Cross, I worked when I moved out west to Calgary, and my first boss out here with Red Cross was brilliant, lovely, super smart lady, but she was a geophysicist, and she was all data all the time, all facts, all data. And I don't know, Nicole, you may have appreciation for this, but there's a lot of soft skills in these organizations, right? And every time they went in for try to get something done with Leslie, they got killed because they would come in with a big story. And we did this Myers-Briggs things, and then we understood that a lot of people were on the emotional side, the story side of things. And she was way the heck off on facts and figures, like off the chart facts and figures. And she needed data to make a decision. So if you understand where that person's coming from, and you understand what motivates them and what their drawbacks are, then you're able to customize your conversation around them. So I would suggest, if you want, there's, like I say, I'll send the link to the free. I find DISC a little bit more factual and a little more interesting. I'll make sure you have the link for it. But I like this one because, of course, this doesn't come in The Simpsons. But it's always good to understand and have a sense of the people you're dealing with, and what's even missing on your team. Like if you did one of these, they call them psychometric tests for your team, you might be missing an important aspect. Like you might be missing somebody who's digital and fact-based and analytical, which you might need to make good decisions as a team. If everybody's all on one side of the scoreboard, you might get a skewed answer. So I think we're coming close to the end of the day, folks, and I can spring you off. Sorry, let me just go back to here. We're going to jump ahead, not jump ahead, sorry. So one of the things this ties into the conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, around the first team and the healthy team. And by understanding how this works and how your team changes through time, the storming, norming, and forming, and then how we respond to that and respond to our people, I think that it allows us to be a little bit more evidence-based in our decision-making instead of responding instinctually or from our gut, which might not be the right way to do it. I think we could always often bump into a problem when we do that. So the story, I've shared it several times. I've not shared it in this setting. This was a story that was given to me by a great friend he was a chief, Grand Chief of Treaty 7, a chief of the Blackfoot Confederacy in Canada, in the Kainai Nation. And so his model around this was, as a leader, we have to think of ourselves as the buffalo in the days when storms and fires grass fires tore across the prairies, and all of the other animals would run ahead of the fire, trying to outrun the fire by running ahead of it, or the storm, in the case may be. And Charlie would always say that the buffalo was the only animal that would turn, put its head down, and head into the fire and head into the storm, because they knew that buffalo essentially knew that if it went into the storm, against the direction it was coming, it would be quicker, and that it would be short-term pain for long-term success. Where the other animals run ahead of the fire would be eventually exhausted and overtaken by the storm or the fire and injured or killed. But by understanding where our team is and understanding how we respond to people on our team and what they need and want, then we're better able to put our head down and turn into that storm and address it. Because the model example I used earlier about the team that I was on that was super struggling when it changed, we didn't think about it. The cost of that storming and just, well, it was more than storming, disruption. It was super unhealthy. And like I said earlier, we actually caused great personal and professional pain to one particular person. When I say we did. And by not acknowledging that and understanding where we were in the system and the program, we failed miserably, actually. And a lot of people were upset and hurt by that. So I think as leaders, we need to step forward. And in closing, the next one, I know we've tried to do this on Wednesdays, but I'm unavailable on the 22nd, on Thursdays, and I'm unavailable the next one on the 22nd. So we're going to schedule this for Wednesday, the 21st. I'll send out an invite to everybody so you can add it to your calendar. And we're going to talk about performance management, dealing both with the good and the bad of our people, and how do we get the best out of them if we can. So I am open now. We have a few minutes left. If somebody has 1 minute left by my clock, sorry. And if somebody has any comment or question, I'd be happy to speak to it. If not, it's lunchtime. And I'm sure everybody's stomach is growling and gurgling, and I don't want to get in the way of you and a meal, but if you're cool, we can call it a day.
Yeah, this one was a great one. Thank you so much. Lots to was practical, and I appreciate that.
Well, I'm anything but practical. So I can't get through life on theory alone, Nicole.
It's
but
my,
it was a great sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's my my ISTJ. You gave me some facts. You gave me some stuff to work on.
Yeah. Well, if you get that disc, if you do the disc thing, let me know what it is, and then I can send you a link on a little more detail about what that means. I personally, as far as leadership and business, I prefer the discs to the Myers-Briggs, but
yeah,
it's a bit
well, I
more.
think one is more,
wide.
in my experience, Myers-Briggs is about personality, which you have to understand.
Yeah.
But discs is a bit more of like those traits that you can hone.
Yeah.
Right? You can work on them.
Yeah. So yeah, and like I said, there's questionable science behind all of it. There's some people that don't think much about it, but I just think it's just another tool. It's another thing, another perspective, and and it's not commandments 11 through 15 etched in granite. So everybody, calm down. Anyways, folks.
Perfect.
Sorry, Winston, you were going to say something?
Well, I just like the analysis part of it, where you can analyze people a little bit.
Yeah.
And yourself a little bit, so.
Yeah, well, I'll share that stuff with you. And if you want to loop back to me, I can help you out. If you want to have a side conversation about it, that'd be great for me too. So, so I'm available. Anyways, all the best. Be kind to
Excellent.
yourself. And if you can't be, and if you can, try to be kind to somebody else today.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. All the
Thanks,
best.
Steve.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.